Salam to all. Let's start with the dollar against Turkish lira as always. Last week it increased as we expected and made a new historical high at 1867, then came down and closed the week with doji. What's a doji? It's the opening and closing levels to be the same or almost the same, which means there's a big fight between the buyers and the sellers. This week, if it is above 1858, which is the closing level of last week's doji, it shall break 1868, 1870 range to try 1878 and then 1905 on its way to our first famous target at 1964. And by the way, this increase shall be a rally, so watch out. On the other hand, below 1854, which is the opening level of last week's doji, it may break 1849 to try 1808 towards 1780, which is quite a strong support. Will the buyers or the sellers win the fight? The rally to which side? Be careful and don't forget the required correction. Now, euro against the dollar. Last week it went down and then turned from 0.9632, whereas we were expecting a spike at 0.9652, 96.43 range. It closed the week with doji. What's a doji? It's the opening and closing levels to be the same or almost the same, which means there's a big fight between the buyers and the sellers. This week, if it is above 0.9726, which is the closing level of last week's doji, it may break 0.98, 0.9832 to try 0.99 on its way to 1.01, and this move shall be as a rally. On the other hand, below 0.9731, which is the opening level of last week's doji, it shall break 0.9613 to try 0.9545, 9450 on its way to 0.9358. Will the buyers or the sellers win the fight? And do the buyers seem eager to win the fight? As for gold, last week it turned from 1,700, then fell unto 1,640. When we were expecting a decline to 1,660, 1,645 if it fails to break 1,705. And this week, if it is below 1,661, it may break 1,645 to try 1,633, and it may trigger the buyers at 1,624, 1,611 range and turn from here. Which direction it will rally towards is going to be decided when it stays out of either side of 1,675 and 1,650 range. So let's watch out carefully and focus on staying outside the range, not a spike. Time for cryptos, and let's start with Bitcoin as always. Last week it went down and turned from 18,161 when we expected it to try 18,525, 18,193 range. It made third consecutive doji. What's a doji? It is the opening and closing levels to be the same or almost the same. And this means there's a big fight. And the three consecutive doji means the fight is very hard. This week, if it is below 19,195, which is the closing of last week's doji, it shall break 18,650, 18,000 range to try 16,947 on its way to the last Fibonacci placement at 15,000 level. On the other hand, if it is above 19,485, which is the opening of last week's doji, it shall break 20,000, 20,800 range to try 21,733 on its way to 22,250 level. Will the buyers or the sellers win the fight? And does it seem like it cannot take its mind off of 15,000? At Lost Ether, last week it went down and turned from 1,191 when we were expecting a decline to 1,050, 998 range. And it made a third consecutive doji. What's a doji? It's the opening and closing levels to be the same or almost the same, and it also means there's a big fight. And three consecutive doji means the fight is very hard. This week, if it is below 1,302, which is the closing of last week's doji, it shall break 1,263 to try 1,185, 1,127 range on its way to filling the gap between 948 and 728, and it may even spike to 710, so be careful. On the other hand, if it is above 1,320, which is the opening of last week's doji, it may break 1,422, 1,472 range to try 1,575 on its way to 1,912. Will the buyers or the sellers win the fight? And are the buyers a bit tired? Thanks for watching. Looking forward for your comments. And let's always watch the premieres on Sundays at midnight all together. Please also don't forget to subscribe, like, and set the reminder. And final kind note, Mr. Sinan Bora requested me to clarify some basic terms, and I'm already sharing them on my Instagram stories, and they're saved on my highlights named as terms on my profile. So stay tuned in, and bye.